Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest. My brother, my main man, Ryan Levesque, is in the house. What's up, man?
Darius, it's awesome to be here, man. But looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, you're officially the first person that's called me Darius on the show.
I don't even know if you know how to pronounce your last name properly. I think we need to fact check that. Can we get the producers to fact check that, please?
It's Smith. It's Smith. The other white meat. No. For listeners who are new to the show, the Greatness Mission, we're about two things. We're about people who are living their passions and those who are creating greatness in the world. And I will tell you this, sometimes I have guests on the show where I don't know them that well, but I've gotten to know Ryan. We've gotten to spend a lot of time together. And man, is this guy full of greatness? And you've done so many cool things. So I'm so proud to have you here. Do you mind if I give a little bit of our background to the listeners around how we know one another?
Yeah, I think that's great.
So it was a dark night. No, I'm just messing around. So Ryan and I, we have some mutual friends. So I actually knew of Ryan through a mutual friend of ours, Justin Donald, from Lifestyle Investor, and he was a part of the launch. You were involved kind of behind the scenes, helping Justin launch Lifestyle Investor, and so I had heard your name come up a lot, and then I ended up joining Tiger 21, and across the table is this dude with the Ask Method shirt on, and I'm like, who's that guy? and I'll tell you this, this is my favorite thing about Ryan. Like, we both have kind of the similar sense of humor. Where I'm trying to think of the technical word for it. We like to fuck with each other. And the moment I caught that on him, I was like, man, I like this guy. And since then, we've gotten to know each other better, man. And it's been really cool to learn about you and all the amazing things that you've done and continue to do. And I'm really proud to have you as a friend and as well as to share what you're doing with the world on this show. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to be here. Yeah, and that's the only reason why I join these groups like that you and I are part of is purely for that reason alone. Like, there's no other value. It's just to screw around with the other people in the room. Like, that's kind of why I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be part of these communities. So yeah, you read that book. You read me like a book.
It's funny what you just said. You just made me think, and so I'll go into your formal background in a second. But for you to say what you just said a moment ago is really interesting, and I think that a lot of people that are seeking to level up in their life, I've kind of done the same thing, which I've spent, right now it's 2022. I spent the last 16 years being in these different learning groups, meeting people like you, and people that are really doing cool things. And what is it? Your network is your net worth, and you end up, to your point, you go to these groups because you want to learn something technical, like whether how to be a better entrepreneur, how to be a better investor, and then you end up making building these relationships with interesting people that have similar interests. And I kind of, like yourself, I'm like, man, I spent so much more money after I graduated college on education than I actually did when I was supposedly forced to go learn, right? So it's really interesting to hear you just say that, especially since you're an Ivy League guy. I know we grew up at a time where it wasn't disgusting to go to college. It was still fairly reasonable. But
Right.
I do really believe that learning is a lifelong endeavor, and you have no shortage of that. Do you mind if I give your formal bio, and then we're going to jump in? I want to talk about all the stuff, the cool things that you're working on right now.
Yeah, sure, man, for sure.
So for those of you that don't know Ryan, and Ryan's kind of a known entity. I get to brag up to a lot of people how, yeah, I know Ryan. He's my boy. We talk shit to each other all the time. But you're the CEO of the Ask Method company. You're an entrepreneur, and you're #1 best-selling author of the books Choose and Ask, a 5-time Inc. 500 list entrepreneur. If you look to my left here, I got a little one of those plaques myself, so no slouch. Over 250,000 entrepreneurs subscribe to his email newsletter offering business advice. And you've been featured in everything from Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, USA Today, and so many more of these great and amazing media outlets. Additionally, you're the co-founder and investor in Bucket.io, and which is a leading quiz funnel software. And we're going to be talking about quiz funnel. It's used by over 30 million people per year. So, man, dude, you're just you're crushing it. You've been crushing it. You are crushing it, and I really am impressed with the business you built, because I'm kind of new to the world of digital, and I came from the world of analog, and dude, it is a fierce battle to build a business, and you've built over a $10 million business, right, in the Ask Method company. That's a big deal, man. An 8-figure company in the digital world is really hard to do. So I'd love to, kind of take us back, because I mean, I know your backstory, but your backstory is super interesting and how you became an entrepreneur. But do you mind kind of like taking us back to, when you're living on ramen in New York City and made, what were you doing that got you into what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Super appreciate that warm introduction, and feeling is totally mutual. I feel really lucky to class you as a friend, and honored to be here and share your story. You're one of the good guys. Everyone listening to this and watching this knows that, but just it doesn't hurt to say it again. So my story, I grew up working class. First in my family, go to college, studied neuroscience and Asian studies at Brown. And I went to Brown. I chose Brown over some of the other places I was looking at, because Brown really at the time had the best neuroscience program in the country. And I thought I was going to become the next great neuroscientist. And my best friend at Brown actually went on to become a neurosurgeon at the Mayo Clinic. So my roommate, best friend. So he kind of did the whole path. Along the way, I kind of realized I was less interested in neuroscience, more fascinated with the brain and psychology, and really how the brain operates in a real world setting. So I became really fascinated with things like the psychology of fear, the psychology of language acquisition, the psychology of the capital markets. And so after college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go into medicine. So I got a job working on Wall Street, and really became sort of fascinated in just the psychology of the markets. At the same time, was really torn between that passion and this sort of other passion that I had for the Chinese language. I'd learned to speak, read, and write Chinese nearly fluently. I'd lived in China for some time while I was in college, and really just had this dream that I wanted to live abroad. And so working in New York, my wife is in grad school, and got a call one day from my future boss, who basically said, "Hey, do you want to come to China? I need to know like now." And I said yes. And I said, "If you buy me a little bit of time." My wife and I weren't married at the time. And he said, "Well, if you want to bring your wife with you, you guys have to get married. There's no such thing as a fiance visa in China. Like, you have to get married right away." So we had a shotgun wedding. We went back to Brown, where we met, got married on the courthouse steps of Providence, Rhode Island. And about 7 days later, we were on an airplane, living halfway across the world in China, and spent the better part of 5 years just really kind of like a cool, fun time of our lives, traveling around Asia. My wife decided to get a PhD at HKU, Hong Kong University. So she was based in Hong Kong. I'm based in Shanghai. I'm traveling to places like India and Vietnam and Korea and Thailand and Malaysia, all across China, just like living this really cool life. And then in 2008, I walk into my office one day, and the Wall Street Journal Asia edition says AIG, which was the company that I was working for, running our expansion across China, AIG to file for bankruptcy. Wow. And it was in that moment that I was like, "Oh crap! Like, what does that mean?" Right? And the writing was on the walls. Right? This was 2008, middle of that financial crisis, and along the way, I kind of had this quarter life personal crisis, where I said, like, all right, I've achieved sort of everything I thought I wanted to achieve professionally at that point in my life, and I felt really empty inside. I'm like, "Is this it? Like, really? Like, this is it?" Sort of like, I saw my boss, who was head of China, and before that, he was head of Asia Pacific for AIG. And I saw, like, that would be my life. Like, if I just continued on the career path that I was on, and I just kept doing the right things, saying the right things to the right people, like just building a career, that would be my life. And I thought to myself, like, I think I want more than that, right? And I know this is like what the show is all about. Like, I feel like there's something bigger inside of me, that I can do something greater with my precious time on this planet. I didn't know what that is, but I kind of took it as the sign from the universe to say, all right, I'm done. And literally that day, without overthinking it, I drafted up a resignation letter, printed it up, signed it, walked it into my boss's office, and I said, I'm leaving. 2 weeks notice.
Wait, and you were in China when you did this?
In China, and I had no plans. I had no other job. I had nothing.
No way.
Nothing. And the reason I gave my boss at the time was just a viable excuse. I said, "Listen, my wife and I, she's in Hong Kong, I'm in Shanghai. It's too hard for us to be like seeing each other on the weekends. Like, we want to be together. Like, it's just insanity what we're trying to do. So I just want to be with her, and we're going to figure out what our next move is." And because she was in Hong Kong, I could be with her as a husband of a student in Hong Kong. So I had the ability to do that. And so donated everything I owned to charity, except for what I could fit in a suitcase, moved into student housing with my wife. We're in our like mid to late 20s at this point. Yeah, like started over again. And then started our first business. In a tiny little 400 square foot apartment.
What was your wife studying at Hong Kong University?
She's studying history. So her background at Brown, she double majored at Brown in architectural studies and art history. And then she did her master's at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian in decorative arts, which is part of Parsons School of Design, which I know you and I have had that conversation about that. And then the only English speaking sort of graduate level program in Asia is in Hong Kong. There may be one or two in Singapore now, but like, China, Japan, Korea, it's all in the sort of native, language, but you can pursue in English in Hong Kong. So she pursued a PhD in history, studying the Manila galleon trade, the trade between the Philippines, Spain, and Mexico in the colonial era, which is just it's esoteric topic, but what she was really passionate about.
So let me ask you a question. So you speak pretty good Chinese then?
Yes. Yeah.
And is your wife speak Chinese?
No, she doesn't speak at all. Yeah, she's Mexican American. So she moved when I moved to China. Like we got on an airplane, and I'd been multiple times. I lived there for about 3 or 4 months. Like I'd done multiple business trips there. She had never been. Literally, it was a leap of faith for her. Like, all right, I've never been, but like I'm just gonna, I trust you, Ryan. Let's do this. I'm gonna move here for 5 years of my life. And I think when she got there, it was a little bit of shell shock because like it is very much like at the time, this was 2004, 2005, and that's
way different.
Yeah, it's a very different place. Where are we, like 18 years later than it was 8 years later, excuse me. Let me think about this. 18 years later. 18 years? Holy
18.
No way. No way.
Dude, listen, I went to
the math in my head. That was like that was crazy. 18 years ago.
Dude, I went to China in 98 when I was 20 years old, which was 24 years ago.
And what the hell, man? Like that can't be real. Like I just did the math. I'm like, no, there's no way. I'm like, no, my son's like 10 years old. No, it was like almost 20 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Different world.
2 years ago that I was first in China. Yeah.
So the reason I asked was like and I have a couple of funny things to say about this. So my mom, who's American, spoke Farsi, and my dad spoke Farsi. So whenever our parents wanted to talk shit, they would just start speaking Farsi because the kids didn't know it. So I was like, oh, do you and your wife get to like talk shit in Mandarin to each other? And like
I'll tell you, the local Chinese get freaked out when it's this white guy. When someone cuts you in line, it's like you go to this old lady, and they're like, what the hell? Which is like, what the hell are you doing cutting me in line? Versus like they just step in front of you. It's this white guy that does this. No, that was a stupid human trick. Just fool the Chinese over the phone, have a phone conversation with someone, be like, yeah, we'll meet on the side of the road. And then like they're looking around for like, be like, yeah, I'll be in a red shirt, And they're looking around, they're looking for like the Chinese guy in the red shirt, and like, where are you? It's like, 你找到你来了吗？就是我啊。
So my wife, who's like very fair skinned, is half Mexican, so she didn't look it though, but she speaks like perfect Spanish.
I know.
And I mean perfect, with like perfect accent. And I watch her mind fuck people all the time because they're like, why is this white woman like it doesn't add up. And so what's funny is Jordan Harbinger was on the show and he speaks fluent Chinese. And he literally said the same thing that you just said, that he like loves like going to restaurants and fucking with people and like speaking the Chinese because they don't expect it from them,
It's totally unexpected. It's and I feel like there are a lot more people now that have studied Mandarin and can speak Mandarin, but when I first studied, whenever it was 20 something years ago, for many locals, it was the first time they'd ever see a Bairen, like a light skinned person who could speak Mandarin. And for them, it was just like, they just couldn't get their mind. Yeah, exactly.
So you said, you pulled the classic entrepreneur move. You're like, I'm out. I'm starting my own. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to be that guy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, kind of, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because I think it's, for some people, it's absolutely the right path. But for me, in my heart, like I realize like I'm a creator. Like that's what I love.
Yeah.
Like for me, I love creating things. Like I just love inventing things. I just love creating things. And I just felt like I was a racehorse with the brakes on. And it didn't matter what I was doing. It just felt like I had so much more that I could give, so much more. And I in my first book, it's embarrassing to read it now, but my first book I published at the insistence of my editor, a personal private letter that I wrote to my mom that I'd never shared with anybody else in the world ever. And in a conversation with my editor, I just had this conversation and I said, yeah, I wrote this letter to my mom when I was at like the kind of the deepest, darkest depths of kind of where I was at. And I just felt like I had to pour everything out and I had to just share it with somebody. And I thought, my mom was the only person that would actually, give a shit and actually read it. And I told her, and she's like, I need to see the letter. And I was like, I've never shared this with anybody. I don't even know if I have it anymore. Like I don't have a physical copy. It was a Word doc and an email. And I found the email that I'd sent to my mom. And this was like, 10 years after I'd written it. And what I wrote in that letter is I said, I feel like as a child and as a young adult, I had this fire inside of me. And that fire every year was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And, where I was in my mid-20s when I had this sort of quarter life crisis, I felt like it was, when you watch the fire in the fireplace and there's just like that one last ember, just that one last sort of ember. And I said, like, that's where I feel like where I am right now. And if I don't do something now, that fire is going to be out forever. And it was in that moment that I kind of realized that I was going to start making moves and start exploring different opportunities. And that's kind of where we started exploring building and a digital business. We had certain constraints that we wanted to work around. We wanted a business that would allow us to travel. It was location independent. We could live and move anywhere in the world. We didn't want to have at that time like a physical presence or location. We didn't want to have an office, and we didn't want to have, like a factory or a manufacturing facility or anything like that. We wanted a sort of new economy style business. And because we started it in Hong Kong, it almost sort of was a global business by sort of necessity. The first business that we went into, the first market was like a totally random thing. It's going to sound so random, but it was actually a thing. It was the Scrabble tile jewelry market, which is like making jewelry using Scrabble tiles and origami paper. And my wife was the one who like stumbled upon this thing. It was like this craze back in 2007, 2008, sort of like Beanie Babies. Like it just kind of like took over. And she's like, I think we can make a business around it. It's like we have access to all this origami paper in Asia. We have access to inexpensive labor in Southern China. We can manufacture this jewelry. We can, import it into the United States, and we can do really, really well. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. Like, it's going to tie us here. Like, I don't want to live in Guangdong province. I want to be able to just travel the world. So we shut the door on that idea. And then a few weeks later, she came back and she said, that Scrabble tile thing is like taking over. And she said, take a look at this woman, what she's doing. And she'd come across this website that was a brand new website at the time. It's a huge website now. We all know it. It's called Etsy.com. But at the time, Etsy was like a startup. It was just a nothing, business. But my wife is always kind of like ahead of the curve on these things. And so she found this website. She's like, look, this woman, she's not selling the jewelry on her Etsy store. She's selling tutorials on how to make the jewelry. And the cool thing about Etsy, like eBay, is you can see a seller's sales history. Mm-hmm. So you can see that she was selling something like 25 to 30 copies a day of this like $40 tutorial. And like I did the math and I'm like, holy smokes, this woman is making like $1,000 a day selling ebooks, teaching people how to make this jewelry. And so we bought the tutorial and it was like literally a Word doc. Like it wasn't even a PDF. It was literally a Word doc. And my wife was like, this is garbage. I can do a better job. And so Tylene learned how to make the jewelry and she created a better tutorial on how to make it. We started selling it. Before we know it, like we're making, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month teaching people how to make Scrabble tile jewelry. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we're going to get rich. Like where the trajectory was like, this is amazing. Like how hard could it be? And then I learned the hard lesson that there are evergreen markets and there are fad markets. And that was totally a fad. And quite literally like within a month, the sales dropped down to zero. The market was saturated. It was like, Pokemon Go or Beanie Babies, like these things like take off and then they drop the side of a cliff. So it went to nothing. And then at this point, we kind of were in a little bit of trouble because we started running out of money. And we're living in Hong Kong, one of the most expensive cities in the world. And we said, all right, what are we going to do now? And my wife said, let me finish the program and then we'll move back to the States. And she got a job in Brownsville, Texas. And have you ever been to Brownsville? Have you been down there?
Is that near what's it called? Where they at? South Padre Island?
Yeah. So it's the southernmost major city in Texas, right across the Mexico border. From a major 1 million+ person Mexican city called Matamoros. And it's a major trade route. But it is quite literally the poorest zip code in the contiguous United States.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite literally like, dirt floors and homes with no electricity. The closest Barnes and Noble is like 400 miles away. Like, it's just
Wow. My son would be so sad. What,
yeah.
what?
So we moved there, and she gets a job as the museum curator at the Brownsville Historical
okay.
Association, which is it's a really important historical presence, because a lot of the trade and battles fought between the United States and Mexico took place there. So there's a lot of historic importance of it, but it's a difficult place. If you didn't grow up there, it's a difficult place to live. So we moved there, and immediately we started over. We had an apartment with bars on the windows, a mattress on the floor. We opened up a bank account. We had no furniture. And so the bank, when you open up the bank account, gave you, those like chairs that you sit in on the side of a soccer game?
Yeah.
Like, so they're like, well, this is the gift for opening up the account. And my wife, who's like a really good negotiator, she's like, we need two.
Yes.
And they're like, deal. That was our living room furniture. We literally had two of those chairs. We'd eat with plates on our laps, a mattress on the floor, and I had a laptop that I bought from Best Buy online for $425. And that's how we started our first business. And, the Scrabble thing went to nothing. We went into another market, the orchid care market. Again, I know it sounds random, but the story there is I bought a bunch of orchids for Tylene when we lived in China. And like 2 weeks later, they all died. And so when I was kind of making a list of like all the different business ideas, I thought, well, I can't be the only idiot that like can't keep these things alive. So we started researching the market, realizing that there was some promise there. We wrote a book on the topic that sold over 100,000 copies. Again, we knew nothing about orchids. We were just students. Like, we're just learners helping other learners, right? We're on this journey and doing the research and then helping people. And what I realized in that moment is that it's far more valuable to become an expert in orchid growers than it is to become an expert in orchids. And that's kind of been a theme in every market that we've gone into, that we've become specialists and experts in the market itself, not about the subject. And what we realized that it wasn't about using technical jargon or having PhD level knowledge on the topic. It was understanding the pains and the challenges and the frustrations that people run through and being able to communicate back to them in a language that resonates with them, where they can have that reaction like, oh my gosh, it's like, you know exactly what's going on in my life. Like, how do you know this so much? And so that kind of became a theme, and we grew that business from nothing to $25,000 a month within a few months, over $1 million a year within a few years. And we went into just all sorts of different markets. We went into the memory market, which was to make my parents happy, using my like neuroscience background and doing something with my college degree, to fish oil supplements, to golf and tennis, and we went into 23 different markets, all sorts of different niches, using what's now come to be known as the ask method process. And along the way, partnered with a few big businesses to implement this in much bigger companies. That led to a few different exits, one of which was a 9-figure exit to NBC in the golf market. Another one was a 9-figure exit to PayPal in the business funding market. And kind of what we developed was this methodology that's come to be known as an ask method quiz funnel, whereby when someone lands on your website, you begin by asking a series of questions in a very intentional and specific way so that you can customize the messaging and the content and the marketing that you present to somebody based on their answers. And, using this sort of methodology that we first, learned how to implement ourselves and then partnered with dozens of big companies, we've since built that, you mentioned, 5-time Inc. 5000 education company, the Ask Method company, where we teach this all day, every day, and a technology company called Bucket, where we've had over 12,000 of these quiz funnels now built on our technology platform.
Nice.
So, we kind of started in a bootstrap way. We didn't raise money. We funded everything ourselves. So this is definitely a bootstrap story. We had our ramen noodle and bologna sandwich days, mattress on the floor, Brownsville, Texas, bars on the windows. I'd drive my wife to work, one car. We'd work at nights. We'd go to the post office and drop off our books that we had sold that day. We'd sell hundreds of books a day, literally crates of boxes, dropping it off at the Brownsville post office to ship them around the world. That was our early start. And since then, we built a company that is approaching 100 employees. It is a global distributed team, meaning that we don't have a physical office. We built the business intentionally so we can travel the world and do whatever we want. We've got team members quite literally in every continent except for Antarctica, who are on the team right now. And, just very excited about the future and kind of what comes next.
Oh man, I love that story. I have a question for you. Well, two questions. My first question is going back to when you started working with these brands. When you said 9-figure exit, was that the client, or you guys were part of that? Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
So the way that my model at that point was it was a 3-part model, and it was a model where I would get paid an upfront fee for designing, constructing, architecting one of these sort of marketing, apparatuses, one of these marketing machines, and I would get paid a monthly retainer, and I would have a success participation fee, which most typically was a 5% gross revenue royalty on all revenue generated. Every single one of those deals that I did also had an exit clause, a separation clause. So that way, in the event of an exit, in the event of a sale, I would get paid a multiple of what that royalty was, based on a number of months and the sort of average revenue generated over a sort of most recent 6-month period. So on those exits, I got a nice little payout. It wasn't, tens of millions of dollars, but it was a nice payout. And the royalty payments, this model became very lucrative. I called it a 55-5 model. I'd get paid $50,000 upfront to start the project, $5,000 a month retainer, which was literally for a monthly call. So it was really a $5,000 an hour rate is really what I kind of, worked my way into. So it was a 1-hour call for $5,000 an hour. And then the thing that I was really interested in was the 5% royalty. And I'd have royalty payments on some of these projects that would be small, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. But I had 20, 25 businesses that I was working with at any given time. So the numbers added up. But my highest royalty payments were $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a month on a single funnel. So, just like a music artist or a musician or an actor or actress, I wanted a way that I could get paid a residual income based on the work that I was doing at that time. And even to this day, in some cases, 10 years after building these funnels, I still get the mailbox money. I still get the royalty payments, just automatically deposited every single month. So I say that because there's a huge opportunity for people to use this model. So if you don't have a desire to build your own big company, you want to be a one-man band and you want to make $1 million a year, I was making over $1 million a year with no employees doing this one thing.
Wow.
And it can be very lucrative for anybody who wants to do that. And it's one of the things that we teach people how to do, in fact, is how to use this model, building a quiz funnel for other businesses, and use it to build your own business where you're getting paid these royalties, this revenue share on the back end without having to build out your own infrastructure and sort of product mix.
So I know you guys work with a lot of digital entrepreneurs. So do you mind if we use my current project as a case study?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I'd love to do this really quickly. So for listeners know that I have this scale map method and we do a boot camp. And by the way, I bounced all this stuff off Ryan for months and months. So he's given me tons of great input on how to build this entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so we do a boot camp, and then from that, there's opportunities to work with us in other ways, right? What I found though is, and this is just, maybe this is a objection you might hear sometimes, is there's so much noise. And you got the Facebook algorithms broken, because of all this, the thing that happened with iOS 14, there's so much competition in the digital space right now. And I'm seeing right now that's man, my cost per client acquisition is it doesn't even work sometimes, right? So we're having to go and play with it a lot. So if you're in my shoes where you're buying Facebook ads, trying out these different messaging to clients, to see what resonates to get them to take action to work with us, how would someone like us use the Ask method or a quiz funnel to optimize or to make the business a better business?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. So I know we spent a lot of time on the story, how we got to where we are here today. I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to geek out a little bit and talk sort of technically and tactically, actually, how you put this into practice. So first things first, iOS 14.5, 2021, Apple made the decision to no longer allow third-party cookies on its operating system, and basically overnight cut Facebook off at the knees. Facebook for years had relied on all of the third-party data shared by every website on the planet who has the Facebook pixel installed on their website, feed that data back to Facebook to give you a rich data profile that you can target very, very accurately ideal customers to your website. Well, fast forward here to today. We're a year plus after that decision, and Facebook is a shell of what it once was, shell of itself. And in order to succeed in this new paradigm, what many people are calling the third iteration of the internet, this sort of Web 3.0, this new era of the internet, where we've moved away from reliance on third-party data to having your own first and zero-party data strategy. What does that mean? Third-party data, other people's data that you're using to inform your advertising. First-party data is data that you track in the background via like Google Analytics of how people browse on your website, but it's not explicit and it's not volunteered information. It's sort of tracking in the background. Zero-party data is a strategy where you're relying on information that's being explicitly and voluntarily shared with you on your website when people visit, i.e. asking them questions when they land on your website and building your strategy around the answers people give you. That is the most reliable data. It is the most accurate form of information. And when you do it well and do it right, and you have the right technology installed on your website, you can then feed that information back to Facebook via something called the Conversion API. And when you do that, Facebook can say, so all those people who landed on your website and answered this assessment in the following way, we can find you more people like that because you've explicitly shared that information back with Facebook. Now, I won't get too technical about browser side and server side, how you set all this up, but this is one of the reasons why this Ask Method quiz funnel strategy is, number one, I think in many ways, what our clients have been doing has been ahead of the curve, almost waiting for this very moment in time. Our businesses and the businesses that are on our platform are crushing it right now. Because for everybody else, if you're not using the Conversion API, Facebook has actually said that your advertising costs, expect them to be 3 to 4 times higher than what they were prior to the iOS 14. They've come out and said it, like they're not hiding from this fact.
Wow.
And so what it means is that if you want to play in this new game, it's like the rules have changed, right? You know, we went from two-hand touch football to tackle football. And so if you don't want to play tackle football, get off the field, close your business down, stop advertising online. But if you want to play this new game, where the rules have changed, you must have a zero-party data strategy. So for your business, for example, what I would advocate very strongly is that your top of funnel strategy is you're driving ads to some form of an assessment. This assessment could be something along the lines of, what's your company's culture score? Or what's your company's growth level? There are 5 stages of growth that every company goes through. And based on your business and where you are right now, that's going to dictate the next moves that you should make over the next 3 to 6 months. Most people are doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. But if you take a moment to answer a few simple questions, we can identify what stage of growth you're at right now and recommend the best next steps for you. Now, that's an incredibly compelling promise, right? If you're a business owner, that's like very valuable. You're not selling a one-size-fits-all ebook that you're asking everybody to download. You're saying, I'm going to give you a personalized plan. Now, when you do that, a couple things happen. You ask those questions on your website. You gather all that incredibly valuable zero-party data. You can feed that data back to Facebook and say, hey, the people who answered my assessment like this, who are making at least $100,000 a month, who have at least 50 employees, who have these specific problems, find me more people like that. And Facebook can do that because you're feeding that information back. So that's the first part of the equation. Next part of the equation, let's say the next step after that assessment is for maybe to invite a certain segment of those people to get on the phone with you or your sales team, right? Well, you might not want to invite everybody to get on the phone. You might want to triage those leads. This strategy also enables you to do real-time lead scoring. So you can funnel all the best quality leads based on the answers to that assessment right to a phone call invitation, maybe middle quality leads to like a webinar, like an educational informational piece. And then the low quality leads, maybe just add them to your email list in a nurture sequence. Maybe they're not ready to buy right now. Maybe they're not big enough. Maybe they don't have the problems that you can actually help people solve. So then you get on the phone with someone. How much more effective is it to have 15 data points about someone that you can have an intelligent conversation instead of wasting that first phone call with, tell me a little bit about your business.
Right.
You skip that first step. So it gives you so much leverage. Now, I could go so much deeper than this, but that's kind of like the practical use case. But the other net effect is, number one, you can cut your advertising costs. I know this is going to be a bold statement when I say this, but we have a ton of data on this to back this up, by anywhere from 30 to 90% on your lead acquisition.
Wow.
So in other words, if you're spending $5 a lead, imagine spending less than $1 per lead. These are real numbers. And there's a lot of layers to why that's true. Part of it is the data conversation that we just had. Part of it is the fact that when you have an engaging, interactive piece of content like this, people will share their results. They'll say, oh, I'm stage 3. I'm stage 4. You're stage 4, really? And there'll be discussions on social media about this. When you do that, Facebook, for example, will reward you as a marketer they'll expand your reach because your stuff is getting so much engagement. They'll expand the reach of your organic content. If you're a paid advertiser, they'll drop down your CPM, your cost per thousand to advertise, because you are getting so much more engagement, so many more comments, likes, shares on the platform. And every platform is the same. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, it doesn't matter what platform you're using. They all operate in the same way. So you drive down your advertising cost by 30 to 90%. But then on the flip side, you're able to double to triple your sales conversion. Why is that? Because instead of communicating with everybody in a one-size-fits-all way, you can customize your content, your copy. You can customize your messaging based on what someone answers in the quiz. So you can show like a relevant case study, for example. Like if you know enough about someone, you could pick from your existing clients and past clients the perfect client case study to put in front of someone based on their specific circumstances. In the same way that if you said, hey, Ryan, like, tell me about an example of a quiz. In my mental Rolodex, I have probably 200 to 300 quizzes that I can think of right now. But if you say, tell me an example of someone who is in the financial space who used a quiz to get more clients. I can think of Jordan. Jordan is a financial planner. He's in Chicago. He uses a quiz funnel to identify how ready are you for retirement. Take this quiz to find out what your retirement readiness score is. So he helps people identify how ready they are for retirement. Based on that information, he gets on the phone with them and uses that assessment as the discussion point for what the game plan is to work with that client. So you can see, like, if you're a financial planner listening to this right now, you're like, oh my gosh, the light bulb has clicked. If you're an e-commerce seller and you're like, wait, what about my business? I sell physical iPhone cases to people. How do I use a quiz for me? You're not connecting as much. So that's just a perfect example of how you can use a quiz funnel as an automated conversation that you would otherwise have one-on-one with people in the real world. You can have that same conversation. Like if I said, hey, Darius, I hear you help businesses. I've got a business. Like, what should I do? You're not going to say like, oh, you should do this. You're going to begin by doing what? Asking me questions.
Yeah.
So whatever that conversation you would have one-on-one with someone, imagine your website being able to have that conversation with 1,000 people a day, 24/7, 365 days a year on autopilot. That's what this strategy is. And these are some of the reasons why it's so powerful.
Wow. So iOS update is a bit, man, I'm so pissed we're out of time. I want to talk to you some more. Like, you just blew my mind. Man, look, give me the quick and dirty here. You're a certified AFOL, adult fan of Lego. I by the way, I hung out with Victoria LeBaume, and I know that she worked with you on this and you're in her book. Can you just tell our audience what that means? And then I know you got to run.
Yeah. So, huge Lego fan when I was a kid, right? Loved Lego. Like, we called it, I was a Lego maniac is what they called it in the 80s. I was a super fan of Lego. But we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So I got one Lego set a year for my birthday. That was like my big annual gift, was a Lego set. And I cherished that Lego set. It was like the best thing that happened to me all year. So fast forward when I became an adult and my kids I have two boys, when they're sort of age, I finally said, all right, I've got money now. What am I going to spend this money on? And of course, it's Lego. So I don't know, we have 100+ Lego sets in our house, constructed, major sets. And so some of my favorite time spent with our boys has been building, the Harry Potter castle, almost 7,000, piece set. Took us months to build that thing together when they were just, a few years old. They weren't that old. So adult fan of Lego. There's KFOLs, kid fans of Lego, AFOLs, adult fans of Lego. And I'll tell you, one of the highlights of my career was keynoting the single largest Lego convention in the United States, Brickfest Live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There were over 50,000 people who attended that event. And I was able to tell my story of how, as a kid, super fan of Lego, I was a fan of Lego, like, all the way through, even as a teenager. And I remember at that time, I had to hide it, like, at a time where, like, it was not cool. Like, it was no longer cool. 15, 16, 17 years old. Like, I had Lego underneath my bed and I couldn't tell anybody about it. I couldn't even tell my parents. I was so embarrassed because I'm like, why am I into this? Like, I'm just so into this. And I told this story, and I can't tell you how many parents came up to me and said, thank you for sharing this, because it was really an opportunity to be vulnerable and really share kind of, what was really passionate about myself. And the story there, the takeaway is that we all have these things about ourselves that we hide from the world, that we're afraid to put out there, that we think, this is really weird. Like, this isn't cool. Like, this is whatever. And the message that I shared was that thing that you're hiding right now could be the thing that transforms your career, transforms your life, and allows you to live that authentic, great story, your true greatness, by putting it out there. And it was the first time I'd ever told that story, and I shared it to 50,000 people who were at Brickfest Live. And it was one of the most transformational experiences of my life. So adult fan of Lego. I'm a super fan. And if you want to come to my house and build some Lego, you're welcome to do so anytime.
All right. I'm in. So I know you got to run
Yes.
and I want to keep you on time.
Yeah.
Why don't we, I know that we want to, you so graciously have offered to, give our listeners a little something from you guys. So would you mind, maybe how can they hook up with you if they want to learn more? What's the hookup that our listeners are getting? And
got a hookup. We have a hookup. So listen, if you're watching this right now or listening to this, your timing is perfect. And here's the reason why. If you have any interest, curiosity on how to set up one of these quiz funnels in your business, once a year, we do a week-long quiz funnel workshop, and we go through the process step by step. We work with you to come up with what your topic is going to be, what your questions are going to be in your quiz, how to come up with a compelling hook, how to create a quiz funnel that goes viral, that people actually share with other people. If you're like me and you're a visual person and you like to actually see examples, like real examples of what this looks like in the real world, we go through dozens of different examples. Now it's a big thing. We do it once a year. It's normally $100 to attend. So it's a $100 ticket price to attend this sort of week-long live training. But Darius and I are good buds, and we want to do something special. So if you go to the link quizfunnel.com/greatness for the greatness machine, quizfunnel.com/greatness, and you use the coupon code greatness, just as it's spelled, it will take that ticket price down from $100 to $0. So it'll be 100% free. I just ask that you don't share the coupon code. It's just for listeners here. But really, this is the best next step. If you're thinking about this and saying, hey, I might be able to use this in my business, or if you're just curious and you want to learn more, this would be the best next step to kind of dip your toe in the water, see how to actually use this, and implement it in your business.
Man, you're such a stud. I appreciate you so much. What a pleasure having you on the show. I learned so much. I can't wait to pick your brain some more when we hang out next. Thank you so much for hooking up our listeners with all this amazing content and amazing knowledge. And man, appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, man. It's been an honor, pleasure, and absolutely I'm excited to jam more about your business and everyone here to work with you, hopefully in the workshop right around the corner.
Yeah, you guys, you heard it here first, quizfunnel.com/greatness, coupon code greatness. Don't share it. This is Ryan hooking us up, and we'll see you guys later. Peace out. Love you.